Re ba Mashile ba se godisa malekane, mokibane wa monesa morale ngwana wa lepula pula ha chabe. My name is Lebo Mashile, and I have been given the wonderful privilege and responsibility of delivering an address to you at the beginning of Library Week, but also of being an ambassador for this year's Libraries Week, which is a task that is very close to my heart because books and libraries are very close to my heart. One of my favorite childhood memories is my mother taking me by the hand when I was in primary school and taking me to the library and getting a library card for me and showing me how to use the library. From there on out, the library became one of the most important spaces in my childhood. It was a free public space where I could go by myself and find treasures that I loved more than anything else on earth, books. At the time, I didn't understand that the tool that I was being given was a tool that was going to ultimately lay the foundation for the work that I would do for the rest of my life. But I knew in my heart that I loved this place because I could access these magical creations called books that allowed me to travel to worlds that I had never been before, that allowed me to meet characters that I understood, that I identified with, characters that I loved, sometimes characters that I hated, but people who I could encounter in the safety of my own imagination and in the safety of a place where I was guaranteed that I could come again and again and again and again and find new ways of expanding my mind. At the time, of course, I mean, these complex understandings of what books mean to me now were not there when I was 8 years old. But I knew that something very special was possible for me in that library, and for me and me alone, that I could give myself this gift every day of being able to walk to the library on the way home from school. And it was like a chocolate. It was like an adventure. It was a place of solitude, but also a place that challenged me mentally. And my relationship with books has remained the same. Books are still a treasure. Books are still tools that I use to expand my mind and expand my work. Books have helped me to understand myself. Books have helped me to understand the world. Books have helped my own words to travel to places and to people who need them the most. Books have been a survival tool for me. They have been a lifeline for me. In times in my life where I have been challenged, where I have been dealing with upheaval, escaping into a book has offered me refuge. There are characters whose challenges have mirrored my own, and characters, fictitious characters, and living characters whose lives have been documented in books, who have given me tools to be able to navigate my own life. South Africa is a very complex place. We know that this is one of the most diverse societies on the planet. It's also the most unequal society on earth. So one of the major issues that cuts through every societal challenge that we have is access. Public space as a concept is a very contentious idea in a place like South Africa because our public spaces, a lot of them are privately owned. How many spaces are actually safe for people to be able to access publicly? When we went into lockdown, we realized that even home is not a safe space for many people. Many people struggled to remain at home during the day because home is not a safe space or home is overcrowded. We saw the rates of gender-based violence and femicide go up because for many people, being locked in the house means being locked in a confined space with people who harm you. This again makes books and safe public spaces, libraries, that much more important because we need places of refuge. We need communal spaces that allow us to find tools and resources to be able to develop ourselves and to be able to solve our own problems. We know that libraries in our country are under-resourced. We know that books in our society are overpriced. In fact, the cost of books in this country is almost criminal, considering the fact that we come from a historical legacy like Bantu education that denied access to information, to so many millions of people, to the vast majority of people in this country. The fact that we have not come up with a deliberate strategy to help the broader population understand the importance of books. We've not come up with strategies to bring the cost of books down. We've not come up with strategies to make literature accessible, to help people understand that literature is not alienating, that literature is not for certain people. It's not only for academics. It's not only for people who write like me or people who are involved in the literary arts, that literature is for everyone. If you read, you will be better at what you do no matter what you do. If you read, you'll be a better cook. If you read, you'll be a better parent. If you read, you'll be a better teacher, a better scientist, a better engineer, a better builder. No matter what you do, books will enhance your ability to be able to do it. And this is also what makes libraries so important. The fact that there are places in our communities where we can access knowledge for free. In a society like South Africa, where so many people have been systematically denied knowledge and where we have failed to address this legacy, it makes books It puts books and libraries at the forefront of addressing historical inequalities. Right now, we continue to battle with COVID-19 and the way that it has just completely changed our lives, the way that it's changed the way that we work, the way that it's changed the way that we interact. Of course, I'm delivering this address to you online instead of live because of COVID-19. And much of my work, I assume like your work, has also been forced to shift into this digital space. What does that mean for public spaces? What does that mean for books? I would love to see the notion of the library evolve and adapt. I would love to see more digital libraries. So many people are online on smartphones. I would love to see libraries become digital archives that people can be able to access on their phones. I would love to see more mobile libraries. I would love to see libraries in places where people are confined. I'd love to see more libraries in hospitals, more libraries in prisons. I think our understanding of the library also is being given an opportunity in this moment to adapt and to evolve the way that we have also adapted and evolved. But that doesn't change the importance, the absolute necessity of physical spaces within walking distance from every human being in South Africa and on the planet called libraries. Libraries are a refuge. If you are a child who is dealing with bullying or even challenges like physical and emotional abuse in your own home, having a physical space that you can escape to in order to escape into your imagination in a book, that's a safety net. That is a lifeline that we are giving to so many people across generations in our society. I wish that we could dispel the myth that books only belong to certain people. I wish that we could break down barriers to access, particularly the financial barriers to access for books for people. I wish that books in this country could be subsidized. I wish that there could be state intervention to bring down the cost of books. It is criminal that we pay so much for books in South Africa, that we pay more for books in South Africa than people do in the West. How is that even possible? Why is that possible? Even compared to other African countries, books in South Africa are incredibly expensive. And again, this points to the necessity, the absolute necessity of physical public spaces called libraries. I have made it my life's work to use words as a way of connecting with people. And archiving those words in the form of books is probably one of the most sacred things that I do of all of the many functions that I have as a human being in this life. Knowing that my words are going to be left behind in books that people will hold in their hands or maybe one day even on their phones. That means a tremendous amount to me because I know that books have sustained me, that books have helped me to understand my identity, Books have helped me to understand history. Books have helped me to develop my politics. Books continue to help me to grow, to expand. They continue to help me to innovate in my life and in my work. Books are a love of books, a love of literature, access to literature. It's a life skill. It's as necessary as learning how to fall in love with exercise or with eating right. Books are an essential part of self-care. When I was much younger, when I first started working in my early 20s, I had the opportunity to work as a facilitator, as a life skills facilitator for out of work, out of school, young people like me in township communities across South Africa. So in places like Alex and Soweto, Tembisa, Elsie's River in Cape Town. And because I am a poet and because I love poetry, I used poetry and the creative arts as a way of being able to talk to people and to allow people to access deeper emotions, deeper parts of themselves. And I remember doing an exercise in one of our workshops with young people who were the same age as me, and using a book by Don Matera, one of my favorite books, A Zanyan Love Song. And these young people loved that work as much as I love that work, as much as I continue to love that work today. They loved these poems, and these poems resonated with them. And then we read the poems in the workshop, and then I printed some copies of the poems and asked people to go home and read them. And this was in Alexandra in about 2002, I think. And I found that when I asked people to go home and read, that they struggled to. And I didn't understand why. And then the one day I asked one of the participants, I can see that you are connecting with the work in the workshop, but why is it that when I ask people to go home and read that they don't? And she said, Lebo, I stay in a 3-room house with 8 other people. If I am reading at 8 o'clock at night and not watching Generations, then I'm being antisocial. It's like, like I think I'm better than other people. And it dawned on me, it hit me like a ton of bricks that access, or the inability to access creates so many barriers. For a young person to go home and read a book is an act that can alienate them from the rest of their family, particularly if the rest of the family is battling illiteracy, hasn't been exposed to literature. Then this act looks like something that is dangerous or that goes against the family norms, that pushes other people away because they cannot do the same thing. I wish that we could create programs in South Africa that could make literature accessible to families. A moment like that, looking back on it in hindsight, and I've reflected on this many times over the last nearly 20 years, that I wish I had gone in that moment and allowed or empowered, given these young people the tools to be able to share what I was asking them to read with their own families. So in other words, using literature and reading as an invitation instead of using it as a way of walling ourselves off and escaping. In a society where we know that intergenerational access has been denied to people in our communities, using books as a way of being able to build those bridges, as a way of being able to create conversations with families, as a way of being able to explore the difficult issues that we have to explore in order to heal our society. We are struggling with so many issues. We're struggling with violence. We're struggling with psychological and emotional trauma. We're struggling with depression and anxiety. We're struggling with developing an inner vocabulary for how to deal with all of these issues that are being compounded by COVID-19. COVID-19 has also made issues of inequality and access that much greater in our society. There's an opportunity here. And books form an essential part of being able to address those issues because information is contained in those books that allows us to expand the way that we think, that exposes us to new ways of doing things, that exposes us to new ways of being. Books allow us to engage with our lives as a creative process. And that's something that is a gift that we give to ourselves every time we read. But perhaps as a society, We should start thinking about ways that we can use this knowledge that is contained in books as a way of giving information to others. So making reading a communal experience, making learning how to read a communal experience, destigmatizing the shame that comes with illiteracy, destigmatizing the shame that comes with having been educated by a system that educated you just enough to be a laborer. That's not your fault. That is the fault of the politics of our society. No one should have to be blamed for or should carry the shame of having been exposed to an inferior form of education that was designed to disempower you. We can use our challenges as opportunities to create a new way of interacting, of connecting through the desire and the hunger for information and for growth. And we can make books an essential part of that. I'd love to see public campaigns everywhere with people reading. I'd love to see public campaigns everywhere with children reading to adults, with adults reading to children, with public figures reading. Oh, I could go on and on and on about this because this is one of my favorite subjects, but I think perhaps the best thing for me to do is to explain what is in my heart through poetry. It takes just 26 letters to create a universe. The world is dismantled and then reassembled through the lens of a pen and verse. I have lost myself in books and then found myself in words, living in a prism of imagination. A prison of silence would be far worse. I've walked through the lives of individuals whose eyes I've never known. I've been to cities and villages and countrysides whose skies to me have never been shown. It was in this solitary cell that my greatest gift was honed. I saw that my mind was just a shell and its abyss simply a hole. And the hell of a heaving heavy heart is still my friend. Every story has its place, and history never ends. The writer is a visionary, architect, a godchild at play on a canvas of memories. She lies naked between the covers, her own lover, her own worst enemy. Navigating between these extremes, she is both the judge and the judged, the vile, despised, and attacked, the unashamedly beloved, the ever-listening friend who'll tell your business when you're not in sight. She pulls the mind's commotion out of stillness in the cavern of the night. And South Africa is a fractured mirror, a paradox of schizophrenic selves who don't talk to one another, who coexist together but don't live with each other, who fear each other, who revere each other, who loathe and pretend and try to blend in with each other. And this is the time when you can become the greatest substance of your dreams unless you live in a shack and don't speak English and don't know what this poem means. Tell me how it's possible for people who walk on gold to not know how to read. Tell me how publishers who will never taste our tongues can comprehend the words that our people need, because we have never been scared of stories, the ones who uttered the very first. The ones who hand them to our children, calling the rivers of their self-worth, the ones who will write the narrative in the ear, but who dare not call the ear a page. The ones who will rhyme without pens and perform without a stage. I don't have all the answers. I'm just a colonized African with a funny American accent who breaks down the Queen's English until Sesotho understands it. Still, I'm compelled to comprehend those who don't inhabit my language. I wonder if trials and translations could help them to traverse my landscape. South Africa is an old-fashioned mutt who knows how to sing and knows even better how to cuss, who knows how to pray when she's about to run out of luck, who knows how to laugh really hard when the tears have run her into a rut, who knows that race is a farce because when the lights are off, everybody's fucked. And when the welts and wounds demand healing salve, words are just enough. It is my honor to be your ambassador for Libraries Week this week. Have a wonderful week going forward. Thank you for the work that you do, putting books in the hands of our people. Thank you for the work that you do, expanding the minds of our people. Thank you for this visionary work. You're building the future with what you do. You're building the future every time a human being walks into the door of the library. And if no one says thank you to you, I'd like to say thank you to you today. The work that you have done has built me, and for that I am forever grateful.